We rate the cinematic experiences we watch through the emotional depth and the intensity it manages to draw out of us. It is the innermost important aspect of storytelling, to manage to spill out emotion out of your viewer. And that is why I'm finding myself years later, after I've watched The Haunting of Hill House, sitting down at my desk, being driven by something beyond myself to write whatever this will come to be. The Haunting of Hill House was a masterful show. That, I think, most who watched it can agree on, but beyond that, it has left a salty taste in my mouth, salty enough to withstand the eaves, and as I've tried to make sense of why that is, I began to explore the story. What happened exactly that made it such a mark-leaving experience? And the answer that came up is something we'll be exploring together. You see, the obvious marketed theme of the show is horror, and there is no mistaking as to its presence in the show. Each episode induced its fair share of fear and breath-holding, and that is the reason that drew us to watch the show in the first place. A show about a family living in a horror house, a blatant cliché that we can't seem to get tired of, but I think despite it being the reason that made us watch and get gripped by the show, there happens to be a bigger, far more subtle yet striking element to the sauce. You see, the human mind is very dumb. It enjoys simple things done well, and doesn't like to think more than absolutely needed. And that is why we didn't notice the underlying theme of the show. It was done so well that we didn't have to think about it. And what I'm getting at here is that before being a horror show, The Haunting of Hill House is before and foremost a tragedy. The horror is the big shiny thing that draws you in and keeps you entertained, on your toes, but underneath that there is a far more insidious, even malicious intent. That intent is to hurt the viewer and not to scare them, which is the role of a tragedy. We might then ask, how should you go about achieving such a thing? And the answer is, by making the viewers deeply care for the characters, by making you understand them, know them. But since your TV show only has a few episodes, which doesn't allow you the exploration of all characters to the lengths that would induce depth to the extent that would inflict enough pain on your viewer, you're forced to make a choice. And what choice should one make in this position? Well, the obvious answer is you do what a pack of lions does while hunting prey. You target the weakest links and go all in on them, and in this case, the two youngest siblings. Also, make them twins and the most emotionally vulnerable ones. Maybe even make them cute as shit just for the fun of it. It is one of the best and somewhat twisted ways you could achieve that. You introduce the characters to your viewers as little kids, yet despite that, make them individual characters that are explored as a person, and not just a story piece, a pawn for the plot. Because we rarely explore children in stories as actual people, and there is good reason for that. Children aren't actually people, are they? They're just a pre-person. This might sound insane, but that's actually how we view them. They are like little human pets, and that perception was broken in The Haunting of Hill House. By doing that, it made you see the child in the adult characters. You could see their actions reflected back on a smaller, purer, perhaps deeper version of themselves. And what you do is you take those little small children full of life, of potential, of joy, and through no fault of their own throw them into a horror house that scars them to the point of making them broken shells for life. Then you flip the switch between their adulthood and childhood, highlighting in the most heartbreaking fashion their inescapable future and traumatic past. Show those little kids in their broken adult stages, battling through life, fighting desperately to try and stay afloat, and pick some of the ones that managed to slightly escape their hellish traumatic childhood and build a somewhat healthy life. And then you throw the monster that they try to escape their entire life at random timings to bring them back to hell. Because you know the only thing worse than hopelessness is false hope. Give your characters a break, but don't make it too long. Just make it last enough to make them start to consider the possibility of actual happiness. Just enough so that they drop their guard. Just enough so that taking away what they've built will crush them. You sniff that little candle of hope right out of them. Because how dare your character and how dare your viewer dream of an actual good thing happening? It is both your character and the viewer's faults. They dared having hope, so make them pay for it. Make your character, in a desperate attempt, try to face that hell, courageously marching towards her most traumatic fears, and then punish her for it with her life. Make her break her neck at the end of a rope in the house that made her life a horrific tragedy. But since that isn't enough, they actually make her the initial monster she tried to escape her whole life. Make her hunt, scar, and traumatize herself, starting off as a kid, literally not only becoming but inflicting on herself her worst nightmare. But before all that, make the mother of these poor kids able to see the future awaiting her little children, show her relentlessly horrific visions of an inescapable future, and stifle the most primal instinct of nature, which is a mother's instinct of protection towards her children.
Of course.
And keep us safe.
Of course.
Make her feel hopelessness and powerlessness in the face of it, slowly driving her into insanity. Make her the only one aware of what is bound to happen, and make her unable to communicate that horrific scenery to anyone. Leave her stuck alone in that vision, pushing her to a state of madness. But since that isn't cruel enough, make her also, through her fit of induced insanity, be the precursor of all the events leading to that horrific future awaiting her children. Make her the one responsible for the infliction of the pain, death, and insanity that is about to happen to the things she loves more than herself. Do not, however, flip the switch on the last episode. Do not pretend to be what you're not. Do not drag the viewer into unending worsening pain through nearly all the story just to try and pretend you weren't trying to actually do that on the last episode. Embrace what you are and let the viewer experience true despair and not 9/10 of it. Be relentless and shameless about your intentions, for they will forgive you if it is truly an unbridled, pure tragedy.